You know, sometimes we sit here and we talk about books are fantastic or they're phenomenal or they change the game. We throw these terms out willy nilly. And there are times in this space, Black Comic Lords, where those words ring true. This is one of those times. There's this book. This is the omnibus of it, of a series called Bitterroot. If you have never heard of this book, if you've never heard of this series, first of all, welcome to the Black Comic Lords. Your education's about to begin. This is a multi-Eisner award-winning series done by David Walker, Chuck Brown, and Sanford Greene. This truly is a work of art. This truly is phenomenal. This truly is groundbreaking. This truly is something that every comic reader should have in their collection. And we are blessed to have all three of these individuals in. Welcome to the Black Comic Lords. Strap it in. We're about to get into it. Please, before we get started, like the video. I'm terrible about this. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. And without any further ado, I'd like to bring on David Walker, Chuck Brown, and Mr. Sanford Greene. What's up, gentlemen?
Greetings.
What's up? What's up?
See you. Thank you for having us.
Welcome. You guys wrote one of the top series of all time. And I'd like to say that I'm saying that because you're in front of me right now. But I would dare someone to show me series that are just fantastically better than this one. I want to start with this. How did this series come together? How did you three talented guys say, hey, let's write a book? Let's put a book together.
Who's going first?
Well, it's
Sanford,
kind of like say it again, Dave.
You go first, Sanford.
I go first.
It all starts, it's your fault.
It's my fault. It's all my fault. I'll take the credit for that. Long story short, we were wrapping up. Me and David was wrapping up Power Man and Iron Fist. We had some things that we wanted to do there that Marvel wasn't quite into. And me and Chuck, we were actually talking about creating something down the line as well that was basically based on a family that dealt with monsters during the Harlem Renaissance. And at the same time, me and David, we were talking about doing something with that time period with Luke Cage. I presented the thought to Chuck that we're kind of simpatico in this, I guess, loosely based idea of doing something during that time period, all three of us. And so I encouraged all three of us to come together and have a conversation about it to see where we could go. I felt like it was something that was definitely there, being that we had similar ideas of the time period. And I just thought it would be really cool if we could, pull our resources and creative juices together to, come up with something. And I think we did okay. So far, so good, right?
Yeah. Go on.
No, please go on.
I was going to say one of the main concepts in the book is again Zondo, that monsters are born from trauma, right? So, seeing us always the sidekick or the afterthought, or us getting gunned down in the streets or being ignored, and it messes with you over time, and just you want to create that in a powerful, positive light, right? And that's one of the ways Bitterroot was born. You know, all the Renaissance, always fascinated with that, how we were able to basically influence music, but we couldn't, you know, come in the front door of the clubs, right?
Right.
What we were able to overcome and accomplish, you know. We're all big fans of, you know, classic, you know, monster movies, you know, classic Monster Hunters, you know, Bram Stoker, all that good stuff. So you can kind of combine those two with the family during the Harlem Renaissance, right? They're curing these monsters that want to destroy them and kill them, right? You helping people that hate you. And I just find that idea, that concept is very, very on a very higher level, right? And it's something I aspire to be. I'm not there now, right? But it's something we aspire to be, the sangria. And that's one of the reasons kind of where this whole thing kind of, you know, kind of was born out of. It was born out of trauma. We want to basically heal our trauma and create these characters and put them out into the world and show them how powerful they are and how special they are and how special we are, you know?
Yeah, I can't really add to that. I mean, I just know that, as Sanford had said, we were at Marvel doing Power Man and Iron Fist, and we got the word that the book was being canceled, and it was like, well, what's next? And then Image contacted Sanford, and him and Chuck were already the groundwork for Bitterroot had already been sort of plowed, but not the seeds hadn't all been planted, just some of the seeds, right? And Sanford came to me and said, "Hey, well, what would you think about joining me and Chuck?" And I said, "Well, you know, let's talk about it. I can be sort of like almost like a bully, right? I'll be like, we're doing it this way, you know." No, I'm more like Apollo Creed in Rocky 3, right? Where it's just like, I just want Rocky to win. I just want him to beat Clubber Lang. And so, you know, we had these conversations, and I thought we could do something really special with this book. I thought that as a team, you know, I'm always thinking about what haven't I seen, but what would I like to see? And that was, you know, with Milestone, back when Milestone first dropped back in the early 90s, it was like, yeah, this is what I was waiting for to see when I was a kid growing up, you know, because you always saw us as the sidekicks or as, like, you know, characters like Robbie Robertson and Spider-Man. It's like, okay, yeah, he works at the Daily Bugle, but he don't do nothing, you know. And I just really felt like the time was now.
Yeah. So let's show the book, Dr. Wizard. Let's show people what they worked on. So, first of all, you guys had like mad covers for these books. Was that part of some type of marketing scheme, or I mean, a lot having variant covers for the first issue is standard. That's the first one's always the one that you use to entice people. But you consistently had really dope covers throughout this entire series. And moreover, the covers always seem to have some type of meaning, for one, and you always seem to recruit some of the best artists to do these covers. Was that intentional?
I think so, because Lord knows, I paid for some of those, and these legends aren't cheap, man. But I was very grateful that they all said yes. Those covers that you have up there, you got the legendary Dennis Cowan and Mike Mignola. I'll be honest with you as well. I think I can speak for all of us that we had no idea what we were doing when we first started this thing. We had the idea, but how to go about bringing this thing to fruition. How do you present this? And to David's point, you know, this, you know, being honest, there really wasn't anything quite like this at that moment that's out there. All Black creative team,
Right.
this all Black, you know, characters in this world. There were a few things sprinkled throughout. I think I did an interview yesterday where when we had our meeting with Image, we had a discussion about that loosely, and we realized there wasn't really anything quite significant at Image done by an all Black creative team since Tribe. And you think about that, that's a long time ago. That's like
A long time ago.
Yeah. So we were, you know, I think I remember even talking to David. I'm like, oh my God, dude, I think we can't just come out with the book. We got to, you know, hit a home run out the gate. And so, long story short, that's a lot of the reasons why those covers, there were so many. We kind of wanted to just have this thing on every level and have legendary creators doing the covers. It honestly, it showed a little bit of that, hey, we had people that were on a level that was supporting this thing. You know, it's great to have a Mike Mignola doing a cover. You know, that's a pretty significant thing. A Dennis Cowan, and then also as a extra thing, we wanted to bring in diverse voices. We had a lot of female illustrators doing covers as well, and so yeah, we were just trying to cover as many bases as we possibly could.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of these covers aren't just, it's not just that you had a lot of covers. They became, you know, we're Black Comic Lords, so the collecting of these things is important to us. Some of these covers are hard to find. And if you find them, the price tag is significantly more than the cover price. I'll put it that way. This Akira variant is limited to 500. It's a ghost. It's a ghost. That second print, only 814 were ordered, also ghost. I saw one raw on eBay a few days ago for like $110. And I'm not even certain it was in mint condition. You guys created something with this. On top of being a dope book, you created a collectible book with these covers.
Well, you know what's interesting? I'm probably I'm the grumpy old man when it comes to some of this stuff, right? Because first of all, like, we don't get any money from those copies that sell on eBay for hundreds and hundreds of dollars, right?
Right.
But it's also like, I'm old school. Like, comic books are meant to be read, right? Where you know, there's some comics where I have them bagged and I have 2 copies, one just so I can keep in pristine format. But now, the older I get, the more I realize, like, what's the point of having it if you can't read it, if you can't look at it? And so it cracks me up because I love these. I love all the variants, man, especially that we did with the homages to the films, like the ones we're looking at now. But it cracks me up because, like, people just get mad at me straight up. They come up to me at conventions. They're like, "Man, how come you did so many? I can't find them." And da 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 da. And I'm like, I don't even have some of them, man. I have one of that Akira one. That's it. That's it. And then there's the cover that nobody has. That for the trade collection, the exclusive trade collection we did for what was that bookstore, Sanford?
Oh, the Kino Kiniya trade.
Yeah.
Issue 1. Issue volume 1. Yeah, volume 1. I think Chuck has a library of all this stuff.
I got quite a few.
Yes, quite a few.
Yeah. So you know, me and my friends, we joke, we call Sanford, you know, the mayor of comics, right? So, you know, people are like gravitate to him, right? So he's just surrounded by all these talented people. So I think that's kind of where all these covers kind of came from. It's like, you know, his friends basically coming on, want to, you know, do covers with him. I think he just kind of surrounded by all these people, and him also putting on young Black artists as well, you know. But you know, he's always trying to do that. So I think that's what kind of made many blossom.
Chuck is right, man. Because I'll reach out to artists and be like, "Hey, can I get you to do a variant cover for me for this other project?" I got money, and they still don't do it, right? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm not even asking for discounts, you know. I'm like, I got loot. Here's the cash, you know. It's like, and Sanford is definitely. I like that. I've never heard him called mayor of comics, but
yeah. But by the time we got to the Juneteenth variant and the Beat Street variant, I think the comic companies, the LCSs, caught on to how popular the book was and how popular these variants were. So you can actually still find these two covers,
Mhm.
as dope as they are in stores, because the stores just started to mass order
Mm.
these covers at this point, because this is like the 13th issue towards the end of the series. But yeah, man, you guys started something with that.
Well, and I'll say this too. I'm going to be honest. I think you got books like Saga or Walking Dead or any of these other titles that this permeates through the industry. And my mindset was, why can't we do that? Why can't we be in the same space as these guys? Why can't we be on the same level in the same conversations? I think I'm sure this is going to be a question. Like my goal, and I think we talked about this, me, David, and Chuck. We were like, we got to make this book undeniable. Like everything about this is intentional. The back matter with John Jennings curating that, it was all intentional. How can we hit as many targets with this thing as we possibly could? And before the movie deal, that wasn't even in our heads. What we wanted was it just to be on the lips of readers, on the minds of readers, and that was the purpose of all that stuff.
My producer, Dr. Wizard, who's in the background and is responsible for all the cool stuff Black Comic Lords does, insist that he share this pre-release promotional flyer pack that came out before the books actually came out. And he has it in a sealed pack, and it's signed by you, Sanford. He said he met you last year in North Carolina. You signed it for him.
Yeah.
And he wants to throw it in my face and say, oh, you have Bitterroot #1? Well, I have Bitterroot, for all intents and purposes, 0. And it's still promotional, plastic, and it's signed by Sanford Greene. Do you have that? And he specifically threw this slide in here just to rub it in my face. So shout out to Dr. Wizard for being an absolute jerk.
My question is, how is it in plastic and I signed it? I can't remember it being. I don't. Did I sign
the plastic? You signed the plastic. I think you signed.
Okay.
Oh, so he's noting. He put in here, I may have 3 of those promo packs to sign. Okay. But did he give one to me? Did he say, hey, I want to give one? No.
Imagine this, though. Imagine if you didn't have those promo packs, but those promos had gone out to people in stores and then they had found out about it that way. Like then we got to build and grow the Bitterroot family. I had a situation, and I'm sure Sanford and Chuck can appreciate this. I had this cat walk up to me at a dinner party like a month or 2 ago, and he goes, so I hear you work in comics. He's like, what have you done that I would have heard of? And I was like, well, I'm working on a series with my friends Chuck and Sanford, Bitterroot. And he was like, never heard of it. And I was like, I almost punched the dude in the face. I was like, so like, because I don't like talking about the Marvel stuff that I've done. I don't like talking about the DC stuff that I've done because it's all work for hire. And even though I like some of that work and I will talk about it, I'm so proud of Bitterroot, right? And I have this thing when I go into a comic book store, I call it the saga test. I travel. Whenever I go into a comic book store, I look to see if they have saga. If they don't have saga, I know they're not going to have Bitterroot, right?
Yes,
and so, I've been into stores because I can't look to see if they have Bitterroot. If I look and see they don't have Bitterroot, I'm going to get mad. I'm going to cuss somebody out. But if I know they don't have saga, I don't even look. So, but that's what's going to what Sanford was saying. I feel like that is the goal, that goal of trying to hit that level where it's like there's like a community behind it, right? A community behind us, behind the project, and that will hopefully open the doors for other creators that are trying to do stuff that isn't part of these mega corporations, right? These mega corporations that are you know, that have everything behind them, but yet we're still, you know, I'm not gonna say struggling, but you know, it's like I still rent. I don't pay a mortgage. I pay rent, you know?
Yeah. So let's get into the book, because I can't believe I spent 20 minutes talking about the covers, but the covers are a big thing. I apologize. But people talk about the covers a lot. Like, do you have this variant? Everyone in Black Comic Lords owns this series. We're like your biggest fans when it comes to the series. So it's not a question of do you have the series, it's a question of do you have the variant. So that's kind of the thing. All right. So this book is different. I mean, you talked about, I like the way you described it, Sanford. You said, oh, it's a monster story about a family of monster hunters. It's such a simplistic way. It's such an oversimplification of what this series represents. Because the topics you touch on, the subject matter you touch on, the themes that you touch on are so much more than that. The allegories on race and class and metaphysics and spirituality, even religion, is all there. I mean, there's everything. You cross so many genres in this series. And there's this quote that I pulled out of the omnibus, which which is a fantastic piece of thing that you got to own. That ain't nothing but the devil. Perhaps a red guy with horns and a tail is just a bit easier to process. It is easier, after all, to lay the blame for human misery at the cloven feet of the devil than it is to take personal accountability. The same is true for vampires and werewolves. They are mythological constructs meant to explain the horrors we face. One of the greatest horrors we face is racism. It is an ignorant, vile, vicious monster that lurks in humanity's past, present, and sadly, in our future. Bitterroot takes this monster and gives it a face and a body and an uncontrollable desire to kill. But this series also gives hope in fighting this vicious monster, and that hope comes in the form of the Sangare family. The Sangarays are fighting a never-ending battle to combat and extinguish the monster born out of racism, intolerance, and hate. Bitterroot is filled with action, drama, laughs, and amazing work. But at its core, the series is a call to combat the bitter root of racism and hate. So, Chuck, you and David wrote this foreword to the omnibus. Can you expound upon that for us?
Chuck.
Yes. Yeah, it was it's how we worry about the things that aren't right in front of us, right? Like I mentioned, worrying about the devil, the devil made me do it, and things of that sort, and dogma, and just the status quo of how we kind of run our lives and not kind of take accountability for the things this country has done, right? No one's ever really apologized for what happened during slavery, right? No one's really taken true accountability for that. And because of that, something that's kind of grown over time, over and over and over again, all these constant struggles, what we kind of fight, in Bitterroot, these monsters. And that's kind of what I was trying to say, trying to kind of wake people up to just look right in front of you and not just look up at the sky or down below, but look right in front of you and try to have peace now here on earth, and just kind of understand that, racism isn't just our problem, it's everybody's problem. And you can see that in the news today, it's because of racism that we're in the state of the country's in the state it's in right now. So that's kind of where I was coming from. David, what's your...
Yeah, it's along the same lines as what Chuck just said. I mean, I feel like we, as a nation, and as a world, we try to blame a lot of things on the victim, right? And as Black folks, we see this all the time. Every time you see some unarmed Black person killed by the police, like the news reports talk about all the bad things that they did, right? Like, oh, he had a bunch of speeding tickets, and like speeding tickets that's why they shot him. Oh, he was selling Lucy cigarettes. That's why you shot him, right?
Right.
The media and this, we have never had the luxury of not being the monster, not being the suspect, not being we did not do all this evil, right? And so it's an interesting concept to me of how do you fight the monster that turns you into the monster, right? And that's really a lot of what Bitterroot is about. And it's about how that trauma turns us into monsters, how it turns us into a thing that we don't want to be anymore. And how do we undo that? And to me, what Chuck and I wrote in this intro here is just really, I feel like, sometimes it's fun just to sit back and watch something and be entertained for the sake of being entertained. We watch a movie, we watch a TV show, we read a comic, and that's sort of it. But I've always appreciated the stuff that lingers with me long afterwards. It gets me thinking. I was talking to a group of young people about a week and a half ago, and one of the questions was, when did you know that you really wanted to be a writer? And I knew that I wanted to be a writer since I was a little kid. Like, I wrote stories, I was into it, I loved reading, but I knew the kind of writer I wanted to be the first time I read James Baldwin. It changed everything for me. I was like, I want to write something like this. I want to write something that makes me stop and read the same sentence over, not because I didn't understand the sentence, but because it got into my brain a way that nothing has gotten into my brain before. And it's gotten into my soul a way that hasn't gotten into my soul, and has made me think, I want other people to feel this way. I don't think I'm ever going to write anything that'll make people feel the way they feel when they read James Baldwin, but that's what I aspire to.
It's funny, you talk about how that's something you aspire to, and the references that you guys make in your writing is significant. And having it set during the Harlem Renaissance, where a lot of these writers people talk about the civil rights movement began in the 50s. It really kind of started really in the 20s, if we're being more accurate, in terms of the Black intelligentsia getting started in that time period, in that location. And the references you make are great. You're very attentive to detail, even in this logo that you had with these cogs that come out of these roots. Can you explain what this means?
Sanford.
Yes. I know for me, when we came up with the title Bitterroot and what this family, how they go about dealing with this infestations of monsters, I started thinking about they use the steampunk technology, and of course alchemy, which is the roots and the different plants to create these serums. And I just started sketching different ideas that kind of correlated both the steampunk side and the alchemy side, and slowly came to that concept. I had some other stuff earlier, guns with roots and all kinds, and I'm like, no, that's a little too, I don't know. It was just a little too, I don't know if the word is threatening, or I just felt like I wanted something that felt like it was more than just something to do with a weapon. It needed to feel like something that represents a system, or some kind of
tool almost, because in essence,
organization, yeah,
right, because when they're going after the Jinnu, they're firing this thing at him, and it has these vials on the guns that make it kind of reminds you of a syringe. So it's very much like you're not just trying to kill someone, you're trying to cure them with a medicine. So that's kind of the aesthetic is dope. So let's jump right in. Can you guys, this is the Sangaree family tree. Is it, first of all, how do you pronounce the name? Because in my head, I pronounce it Sangaree. Is that how the word is pronounced?
Everyone pronounces it different.
How do you guys pronounce it?
Wasn't it your idea, David, to make the name
have 2 words?
Yeah.
So it's there's San, which is Haitian Creole for blood,
Yeah.
and Guerrier, which is Haitian Creole for warrior. So the name means blood warriors.
Okay.
And so I tend to say Sangare or Sangare. Yeah, I'd say it's Sangare. That's how I say it. It's one of those words that, like, until a movie comes out and they decide what they're gonna call it. It's like when the Shang-Chi movie came out, and I was like, I'd spent my whole life calling him Shang-Chi,
Yeah.
and they were like Shang-Chi. I was like, no, that's wrong. So I and but I say Sangria.
See, I've been pronouncing it Sangre. Sangria. All right. I will
Sounds
pronounce it from this point forward. It shall forever be known as Sangria. All right. So let's go through this family tree. You've got Ma Etta at the beginning. She was married to Metellus Sangare, who we never really get to see, and they have this offspring. You guys want to go through the chart? Actually, for sake of time, let's just jump into the characters themselves. Here's Ma Etta, and she's there with Blink. Can you talk about who these characters are?
Yeah, who wants to go? Is it me?
You can
I'll
go.
do it.
You.
So that's Blink. Blink is the Blink, or Belinda. That's her birth name, her given name. She's one of the younger members. A whole generation of the family, most of an entire generation was killed off in something that we don't really get into great detail about. And so all that's left is Ma Etta, who's really old, and her grandchildren, and of which Blink is one. And so Blink knows how to mix all the herbs and the roots and everything to create this serum that is used to treat the Jinnu, which are the monsters that they're fighting. But Blink really wants to go out into the field, and she wants to be a fighter. But Ma Etta is like, a woman's place is in the home. You don't go out, you don't fight, you don't do any of those sort of things, which isn't totally true, because Ma Etta used to do that stuff. So we start to realize what Ma Etta is doing is protecting the last of her family, and this is Blink is the last woman in the family, and she's very protective of her.
And Mata is that the matriarch of the Sangria family.
She's the matriarch. That's right. She's the first one. She met Miletus, who was part of the Haitian Revolution, who then came over to the U.S. and started fighting these monsters way back in the day. And
She also, Ma Etta also, I believe, is rumored to have, well, not rumored to, she also met Harriet Tubman, was saved by Harriet Tubman during slavery. All right. So then we have one of the kids, one of the youngers, Cullen. Can you describe who Cullen is?
Chuck, your turn.
Yeah, Cullen is a bit of a reluctant warrior. He doesn't really want to be a part of the family business, but he's kind of thrust into it. He can be a bit selfish at times, very reckless, and he went through a lot of evolutions through the story. He kind of started out someone as the main character, but as me and Deb began to write and develop it, Blink kind of started to overshadow and become more of a main character. He goes through a lot of turbulence in the first arc. Kind of gets a glimpse of the dark side, and he's our kind of a more or less, our second in Zondo after Dr. Sylvester.
And now we've got Berg, short for Burgess.
Berg went through an evolution. David, you want
to? Sanford needs to explain something.
Well, no, I mean, you guys are knocking it out of the park. Berg is. I think one of the things that we definitely wanted to do was we have these comics stories in general have these archetypes, big burly, muscle guy, or the strong man, if you will. The archetype is always kind of like he's more of a simple person, and not necessarily simple like slow or anything, but just he doesn't. he's not complicated. He's not complex. And we wanted to turn that upside down to some degree and make Berg a very, he's an intellectual scholar. He loves tea, and
he's loquacious.
And he's loquacious.
And I gotta say this, I want to point this out. That was Chuck. When we were first doing the dialogue, Berg talked very simply, and he still had that. He had this. We were playing with the contrast of him being the big, tough, burly guy, and he's sipping his tea, but he talked just like a regular person. And then Chuck was like, "Yo, what if we had him using like really big $5 words, $10 words?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's great." And then it became like, I'm having to break out the thesaurus like all the time.
You literally said you want people to break out the thesaurus every time.
Oh, I still don't know what salubrious means.
And I guess that's to these guys' point. He became kind of the breakout character just from those different approaches that they took. He got this look, but then there's so much more behind that. And I loved the direction, and it made drawing that character a lot of fun.
And
Berg's my favorite character by far.
I think it was in the Red Summer Special. We wrote a short story about Berg's origins, and we have him as a stutterer. And his father basically said, "I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you our weapons room." And the weapons room is basically the Singiri library. And that's kind of why he learned to overcome his stutter, by basically studying all these books and reading all these books, which gives him the vocabulary today. So he talks this way to basically, combat his stuttering.
I'm going to slowly bring this into character. He's so popular that we had a friend that wanted to create this statue.
Nice.
Mind you, that some of the stuff is starting to, but this is something we discussed about doing. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but we discussed loosely about doing some stuff like this for all the characters. But Berg was definitely the most popular. Let me slide him in the camera here.
Have you shown this to anyone else?
It's on. I posted it online a while back. The company Concrete Jungle, they were fans of the book, and they reached out and said we wanted to do a statue. Well, they wanted to produce a prototype, and with the prototype, they wanted to gain interest with from fans.
Check out the chat, and you will see that the fans have interest.
That's why I showed it. So when I mentioned it to the guys about that this company wanted, and these guys, Concrete Jungle, they do like really high-end statues for hip hop legendary, acts, everyone from Rakim, Nas. Just look them up. Concrete Jungle. Just look them up. You'll see all the stuff that they do. Anyway, that's how popular this guy is. They were willing to do this thing on their own dime just to show that they can do it. So, we just have to come together and figure out when we're going to do stuff like that.
You can already put me down for a pre-order for that Berg statue.
Well, what we need is about 500 orders of these, and I think we'll be good to go.
All right, so just Kickstarter.
Maybe not 5, maybe half that, 250.
Kickstarter it, throw it in the Black Comic Lords Facebook page, and let's get that thing done because I need that on my shelf. I got a space for it.
I don't even have one. Sanford has the only one that exists.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Goes up, David.
Let's go back to our slideshow here. All right. So one of the things I see here with Berg, he's got this staff, and he's been shot out by these Jinnu police or what have you. This series is the genres, as I said, there's multiple genres. You've got the steampunk sort of aesthetic, but there's also magic, alchemy. Do the Sanford Greene family use all of that? There's a mixture of technology and magic and alchemy.
They do. Some use more over the others, right? So like
Yeah.
Ford, who we haven't gotten to yet, Ford is just straight about like, give me the biggest gun you can give me and I'm gonna blow everything away, right?
Yeah.
And whereas the others, Enoch is like, no, we have to understand both the science, technology. We also need to understand the magic. And that's where, like, when we introduce the family at this point in the 1920s, this is them really starting to understand, oh, there's more magic here than we realized, right?
Yeah.
And then in the new series that we're working on right now, it's them realizing, oh, there's even more to what we thought. So
All right. So you talked about Ford. This is my second favorite character.
yeah.
This is the classic 1980s action star. Give me the biggest gun possible, and I will wipe out all the bad guys type dude. This is a guy I can relate to. But what's interesting about Ford is that he quickly picks up a sidekick that is unexpected to the reader. Can you guys talk about this and what was the impetus for this?
So Ford and the white kid, his sidekick Johnny Ray Knox, was we're going to get into some spoiler territory, right? But that's fine. It's the book's been out long enough. I wanted, whenever we see these stories that have Black supporting characters, at some point those Black characters die, right? You see that in a lot of horror, you see that in a lot of sci-fi, and it always frustrated me. But I wanted to do that with a white character, right? I want to have a white character that we could specifically kill off. But before we killed him, I wanted to take him on an arc and a journey, and I wanted to take Ford on an arc and a journey. And then it got to the point for me personally as co-writer where I didn't want to kill Johnny Ray because I actually liked him, right? And I was like, it's this is gonna hurt. This is gonna feel really bad. But I also realized that his death is going to change everybody in the family, right? Because at some point, everybody they sort of adopt him and they bring him into the fold, and that was it. So we just were waiting, and I was prolonging it because sometimes as a writer, the characters really start to come alive for you, and you have to start making these decisions, and sometimes these decisions are life and death. And I knew that I wanted Ford to be this hardcore, like kill 'em all sort of person.
Mhm.
And I knew I wanted him to get to a point where he wasn't that anymore, where he was like, oh, there's more complexity to humanity. I wanted Johnny Ray to be part of that journey, right? And then, but when it came time to kill him, it was like, oh no, this is painful, right? But I think it was effective. I think Chuck and I originally like killed him off. We were having him dead by like the end of issue 5 or something. It was really early on. And it's like, and I was like, no, wait, we gotta wait.
Yeah.
And more of it was just like this emotional thing for me. And I talk about, when I'm teaching, I talk about earning the moment, right? You earn the death of a character, or you earn these big emotional beats. And I was like, I knew Johnny Ray's death. I wanted people to feel it. I wanted them to like be like, no, the same way that I felt every time I saw a Black character get killed in a movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we all can relate to that because we've all felt that so many times. Now it's like, and so part of me was like trying to just be a dick about it, right? I was like, oh, I want white people to feel the way like we feel all the time. and then it turned into something else.
I think one of the things that made illustrating these characters so enjoyable was, to David's point, seeing the evolution of these characters. And Johnny Ray isn't the only character. Literally every character had a moment of transition. They were one way in the first half of our story arc, and by the end of everything, they were totally different, all of them. Some most for good, and then some maybe not so much. Yeah, that's a really tough balance to have that many characters. We hadn't even touched on like Sylvester and some of these other characters and the other family members. It's a tough balance, man. And these guys, David and Chuck, did a magnificent job of balancing all these characters and giving them all interesting arcs.
So you just mentioned Dr. Sylvester.
Nice segue, I guess. That was a good segue.
That was good. That was spot on. This was a particularly interesting character in terms of, you had this sort of intermission one-shot book, Red Hot Summer, which was an origin book. For all intents and purposes, it was like Bitterroot Zero, right? Talking about the origins of several characters. He talked about his origin. And his origin story sort of begins with the Tulsa massacre, and this interaction with this other character, Ms. Nightingale. Can you guys talk about these characters here?
Yeah, I mean, Chuck, Sanford. Sylvester started out like really. He's the character I think that sort of evolved the most in our minds, in our hearts and our minds. And he was originally supposed to be more of a villain. And Chuck talked about him being more like the Magneto of our story, right? And I've always found Magneto to be a really interesting character. He especially got more interesting into the 80s during Chris Claremont's run, and then what they started doing with him in the films. And I was like, well, there's nothing more interesting than a tragic villain who doesn't think they're the villain, right? Who thinks they're when Jack Kirby and Stan Lee created Magneto, he was the head of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, right? It was very clear what he was about, right? And he got nuanced. And so we just started thinking about it like, okay, well, who is Dr. Sylvester and what is he after? What is he trying to figure out? And he's not even sure of it. He's more driven by this sense of loss and this grief and all this stuff. And he's transforming like some of the other characters are starting to transform into this monstrosity that is not of his own creation. And Nightsdale was just again a character that we were just sort of the first 5 issues really are us figuring things out, right? And sort of throwing a lot of stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. And then it was like, oh, what if, and then the Red Summer special became, what if we give some little bit of backstory and explanation to it? And so Nightsdale, Sylvester lost his children in the Tulsa race massacre, and Nightsdale is the one who found him, right? And she saved him and nurtured him back to life. But she's also been transformed by all that violence, right? And they're both transformed by this violence, and they're trying to find a way to fight the evil, but they're running the risk of becoming evil themselves.
So then we have Uncle Enoch. Enoch. Is it how you pronounce it? Enoch? How do you pronounce his name?
Enoch.
Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the science officer of the family, so to speak. And these creatures, which I didn't find until much later in the issues, I think are referred to as Cantu.
Yes, I think that's what that is. That what they're called? I couldn't remember.
Well, we called them imps
We started out calling them imps.
Yeah, but yeah.
It was Shelley Bond, our editor, was responsible for us coming up with a name beyond imps. Mm-hmm. And so Cantu, I'm guessing, I'd have to go back through my notes. It's probably tied to, it's probably a Mandinkan word, because a lot of the words that they use, Jinu and Zandu, that the family use, are sort of mispronounced African words specifically from the Mandinkan language. Like the idea was that a lot of the technology, a lot of the mythology, a lot of things that they use came over from Africa, but over time, the words got distorted and they didn't quite get it.
Creolized.
Yeah. And so like this question right here, Nzandu, Genu, what are the inspirations for these terms? Both Genu and Nzandu are words that come from the Mandinkan language. The Mandinkan language was a West African tribe. A lot of people that were enslaved during the slave trade were Mandinkans, and so like Genu, I think means, if I remember correctly, it means devil, and then Inzando may also it may be another word for devil, or it might mean sick person or something like that. Like I have all these notes. If I knew you were going to do this deep of a dive, I would have pulled out some of these notes. But I get that way. Like I was really thinking about what would happen, if with all of this. Like, what are the words that they speak? So the serum that they use is derived from a plant called the fifno, and the fifno is also that's also an African term. And I even went through, when we were talking about this, I was like, okay, what African language should we use? Because there's so many languages spoken in Africa, and that in and of itself became like, you can't pull anything from East Africa necessarily, because Eastern Africa, the eastern part of the continent, wasn't hit the same way as the western part of the continent was by the transatlantic slave trade. So a lot of it was just like making stuff up, coming up with. I thought it'd be cool to call monsters something other than monsters,
Yeah, I was going to chime in on that. Based on all those different elements, we thought, and we're slowly putting something together that kind of gives you a like a chart or a guide to Nzando, Genu, the different serums. It's a lot. I think one of the great things is that there's so many different factors that we can really explore. It's a very rich, fruitful concept, man. And everything, even the imps. Like we touched on that in the first arc. Where they come from, how Enoch stumbled upon them. We thought it was really cool that the crazy uncle, he's a genius though, right? And he tapped into some other realm and found these creatures. So that plays a significant part, in the first story arc.
And then we have, we talked about the gun that he uses, that Ford uses, that all this family uses, these weapons they use, and they shoot these I don't know, pellets basically of serum from the fifno plant, right? The root, this bitter root, I guess. And you mentioned there's two sort of bad guys or demons they're fighting. They've got the Genu, but they also have the Nzandu. Can you describe what the difference is between these two entities?
Well, so
one's bad and one's really bad.
the Genu are they're what happens when the soul becomes corrupted by racism, hatred, things like that. And so for all these generations, the family and other families have been fighting the Genu, right? The Genu are white racists. Bottom line, that's what they are. And as our story kicks off in this first arc, there's an introduction to a new monster, which is the Nzando. The Nzando are the monsters that Black people become when the pain and the suffering and the trauma is too much, right? And it's the monsters that we become, and we can't control it, right? We've hinted at the fact that the Genu, that there may be some level of control that they have, that they can revert back to their human form. But with the Nzando, it's like you're an Nzando and that's it. Like, how do you fix that? How do you cure that? And to me, it was really about how do you cure the trauma that we as Black folks have been through, because it's a multi-generational trauma, right? The things that happen to me, I was also impacted by things that happened to my father and his generation, to my grandparents, to my great grandparents, to my great great grandparents. And we live in a nation as Black folks where this multi-generational trauma is so intense and it's so ingrained in us that we have become something other than what we were supposed to be, right? Because we were brought over here and enslaved and then taught. So many of us were taught, oh, this is what we were supposed to be, because that's the whole basis, was that this was the Eurocentric idea that somehow God had chosen white people to be superior and reign supreme, right? Like if you go back and you look at all the laws that were written that allowed for slavery and the enforcement of slavery, it was all this God ordained sort of nonsense, right? And so the Nzandu is like, what happens to us? And I think inside of a lot of us, there's that pain and that trauma that we carry around, that if it were to take over us, it's either going to destroy us or it's going to make us lash out and destroy everything that's around us, or we're going to turn it into art. And that's really what the Nzando are. They are it's I remember my grandfather explaining to me soul food, right? Talking to me about chitlins and all the things that he grew up eating. And he said to me, we grew up eating the things that white people threw out. And that's what soul food came from, right? And I started thinking about, when we were really getting started on this, I was thinking about hip hop, right? I was thinking about how hip hop is what it was created from people taking scraps, sampling and scratching, and it was made by people who had almost nothing, and they turned nothing into something, right? That's but all those people, when you look at the early pioneers of hip hop, especially in the Bronx, because that's where hip hop was born, was in the Bronx. But then you go over to Brooklyn, you go over to Long Island and other spots, right? Those were all people that would have been considered criminals by most folks, right? They were all be considered monsters by most folks. The graffiti artists, the graffiti writers, that was a crime. That's something a monster would do, right? Plugging in your turntable into a street lamp to steal electricity from the city is something a monster would do, something a thief would do. But these thieves and these monsters, we created art. And that's what I think ultimately the Nzando really are.
So here's a question from you, from Eclectic Birdie Nietzsche. Could a third monster group be formed if a Black person has intense self-hate, like a fictional Uncle Ruckus or a real-life Candace Owens? Would they just be Nzando?
Stay tuned to the new story arc.
You might see something like that, yeah. No, that's definitely an interesting question to be raised, and so we're and there's some new stuff coming up in the new arc for sure.
All right. So the other thing, we mentioned the little red bunny rabbit Cantu things, which I'm still trying to figure out those things. And Enoch got them through portals. So you have portals in this world, which lead to a realm which I don't think you guys ever. It's called Barzak.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that, because in this storyline, a major plot line is that you had, to summarize, a major event in Chicago 19, major infestation of our realm from Barzak, this other realm, through a portal. And a lot of the Sangari family were lost, or assumed to be lost, either killed or disappeared through the portal. Cullen here is shown being dragged through the portal, and we don't see him for some time returning. What is Barzak supposed to represent?
Chuck, do you remember what Barzak is supposed to represent? Because you're the one who had the name.
I think it's more like more or less like a purgatory, not quite hell, not quite a hell, not quite a heaven. It's where these creatures, these Genos spirits that basically come from that dimension and infect the racist and the hateful people, and that's kind of where those creatures reside. And I think in the Red Summer special, and I think it's Chicago, right, David, where
Yeah.
a great deal of the family was sucked into that realm, and they've been living there ever since. And that's kind of where we got, I think, a lot of, well, again, a lot of spoilers, but a lot of the family basically, returned with Cullen from that dimension, and Cullen came out changed, a totally different person.
So yeah, Barzak is like a limbo or a purgatory, and I can't remember which. Again, it's in the notes what faith it's based on, but it's a very ancient religion. So like we talk about heaven and hell, but like in Roman mythology, Greek mythology, there's places like Hades, and in Norse mythology there's Valhalla, and there's these realms where the gods reside and these deities reside, and there's versions of heaven, there's versions of hell, there's versions of purgatory, and Barzak, I can't remember what faith it comes from. I want to say it was more of a African or Islamic faith, that Barzak was this place of sort of purgatory. And I just wanted, like, sometimes you just paint yourself into a hole, from a story standpoint. You're like, oh, we need to have some place for people to disappear and come back, and what should it be? And then the thing is, well, let's have it be something that the readers haven't seen before. Let's try something different that the readers haven't seen before. So then you start doing the research and you go, okay, wait a sec. What is, like, you type in Western African folklore purgatory or something like that. And then you find these lists and you do a little bit of research. Then you make the notes. And then a couple years later, you've forgotten where you came up with stuff. So
I remember some of the most fun I had on the book was David and I was in San Diego talking about what happens to Cullen when he comes out of purgatory, and we're just brainstorming ideas back and forth. That's really cool.
In the X-Men comic books, they had back in the 80s the Siege Perilous, right, written by Chris Claremont, where the X-Men walked through this portal and were basically reborn. They were died and were reborn by walking through Siege Perilous. That's what this portal ends up kind of representing for y'all, because characters would walk in, come back years later, and they're like reborn as a new, with a change, of some sort, whether in attitude, in age, in skill set, in Cullen's instance. So it became a great way to sort of redo your characters from a different angle, or look at them through a different lens when they come back.
And we had to be a place where time and space exist very differently, right? And so again, it's a lot of it. This is like, you sort of come up with tricks as you're writing a story. Oh, what do I need right here? I need Cullen to disappear for a while, right? And we want him to come back hard and toughened, but we don't have enough issues to do that. Let's send him off to this alternate realm where, like, one day here is like 10 years there, and I always tell people that, on the planet Venus's rotation around the sun takes nearly a year of Earth's time. So I sometimes be like, yo, are we talking Earth time or Venus time? Because Venus time is like a year, whereas Earth time is like a day.
Sanford, your visuals on this are, look, we're all big fans of your work, and we've seen, obviously, your work all over the place. But I really, in my personal belief, think this is like the best work that I've seen you do was in Bitterroot. Just in terms of the creativity of the look and aesthetic of the characters, the coloring. I know that there are some of these you colored, some of those you had some colorist on, but the palette that was chosen for it was dope.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what was the process of creating this universe for you?
When these guys came up with the characters, and we already were having conversations about the era, the time period, the Harlem Renaissance time period. I think my brain was sensory overload. I grabbed every reference from Harlem Renaissance time period, and the steampunk element just seemed like a perfect marriage. And super just excited about. We have something really that really hasn't been explored quite in that direction that I know of. I don't know of a lot of things that explore both genres together like that. So I felt like it was almost I don't know. I knew that I needed to do more than just draw these characters. I needed to explore it. I needed to study it. I need to absorb this world, this look. And I mean, honestly, you're going through these images here, man. I hadn't seen these images probably in over 2 years.
Yeah.
Once I do work, I kind of move on. But I knew, at least at when I was done with it, when you finish something, sometimes, especially in this business, I don't know from the writing standpoint, but from an artist standpoint, you're under such a deadline to finish and move on to the next issue, especially when you're working on the big two stuff or whatever. And it was so gratifying to not have that crunch of a deadline. Although we had time schedule, I wasn't under that level of a crunch, and so I was able to really absorb this world. And looking back at these images, I'm like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it'd be.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Wow, dude, this is fantastic work.
No, but I mean, look, for me, I am always trying to push my craft to be even better. I'm sure David and Chuck, any of us, we think that same way. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the goal was to not treat this like any other thing I've done before. Like this at the time, currently is my greatest, most important work, and I'm sure these guys can say the same thing.
So does the Eisners, apparently. They would seem to agree with you.
Yeah.
Just as a quick aside, I saw you a month or so ago at an Original Art Expo in Orlando, and got to see you in your process. There's a thing called the Kirby Crackle.
Yes, sir.
What's your name for what you do with your splatter? Because I got to see. I don't know if you want me to say what you do to do that.
Yeah, it's a old trick, man.
So so for those who don't know what I'm talking about, see the little dots behind these characters, a little sprinkle of dots paint. He takes a toothbrush and he just takes his thumb dips it in some ink and takes his thumb and splatters it on the page. I never knew how he did that effect, but if it's not called the Kirby Crackle, it'll be called the Sanford Sprinkle, the Sanford Spray,
and Splatter.
I need to brand it and put it in a bottle and sell it.
I think Sanford Spray could have other.
We don't sprinkle.
Sprinkle. The Sanford Sprinkle. There, we'll call it that. The green grain.
The green, green, yeah. But it's just learning that stuff from some of the masters. I've seen Bill Sienkiewicz do that stuff, and so many other great artists. And over the years, I've learned to what's the word? Have more control over that stuff. I was kind of like all over the place at the beginning of my work. Bitterroot honestly was a great place to really just bring everything together that I learned over the years. It was definitely something that I guess I'm kind of known for now, that splatter, sprinkle, if you will.
Well, the chat's got to decide on a term. Is it going to be the Sanford Sprinkle, the Sanford Splatter,
I like the
or the
green
green grain.
Let's call it the green grain.
The green grain, is that what we're going to go with?
Green grain.
All right, we got to trademark that.
There
All
you
right, so towards the end of the book, there's an interesting theme that you guys came up with where you see, it would be immediately simple to simply say just a black family going out killing white demons. That's simple. You guys don't make it simple, and I appreciate that. When you talk about we're fighting the forces of evil and the forces of racism and bigotry, you don't simply label it's white folk we're out here killing, because these feelings can be spread all around, right? That's why you've got the Genu and you've got the Inzandu, because it's not just the evils of the bigotry, it's the trauma and effect it causes on the people affected and how that turns them into evil. And then but at the same, you also have these allies, right? You have these interactions across the lines. We're talking Harlem in the 1920s. In New York back then, to this day still, New York is a very tribal area. You've got a Chinatown, you've got an Irish section, you've got an Italian section. Everyone's got their own histories. And I love the fact that you have these interactions of characters were like, well, you guys call it the Genu, but in our culture, we'll call it the Guaizara or what have you. And they're all fighting the same forces of evil, but from their own cultural standpoint. And you ultimately have these instances where people come together and say, the only way we can defeat this is through us coming together. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that was always like, I mean, if you can't get complex and write a story on multiple layers and really get people going, I wasn't expecting that. Didn't expect to see that. Like the subplot with Johnny Ray, and then we take it even further, right? We take Johnny Ray's legacy and we build on that. That's what I think that's what's amazing. It was I was in Cleveland, Ohio recently, talking to a group of young men, like between the ages of like 7th grade all the way up through high school, and it was mostly African American young men, but there was a handful of like white kids in the audience too, and it was like, and they were just as excited to be there. They were just I not. We can't fall in the trap, both as human beings and storytellers, as having it be, all white people are bad and all the black folks are heroes, right? It's just like, to me, that's not an interesting story. That's not a story I want to read. Right. So it's definitely not a story I want to write. And so I tend to push for a lot of that sort of stuff with everything that I do. Like, let's get into the nuance. Let's get into the nuance of there's when we were working on Power Man and Iron Fist, when Sanford and I were working on Power Man and Iron Fist, my inspiration for those two characters was Barry White and Wink Martindale. And younger listeners aren't going to know who Wink Martindale is. Wink Martindale was like this white dude who hosted these game shows, right? He was not what you would expect to be Barry White, the ultimate soul singer's best friend, but they were best friends in real life, right? And I thought it was so interesting because you would see them in interviews talking about their friendship. And it's like, true friendship, true love, true camaraderie will like supersede race, supersede religion, supersede gender, all of that sort of stuff. And that's part of what I wanted Bitterroot to be about, was that like, oh, we all have to work together. See, because if we, it's that old saying, either we learn to live together or we all die together,
Right. Yeah. And so your series, your original series, kind of ends where in like 1940s World War II, the next generation of the Sangarees under Ford are growing up. But then we do the series you have upcoming now, Bitterroot: The Next Movement. This takes place, I think, 1965?
64.
64.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So this is the ash can that came out a week or two ago. I managed to get a copy. Well, actually, I got like 3 copies, and I gotta say, I'm a little pissed off at my LCS because technically these are supposed to be free giveaways, promotional items to get people to pre-order your book. And the LCSs were down here in Orlando, Florida area. We're selling these for like $8 to $12 first day. But
Well, see,
I love you guys. I love your work. So I'm like, let me just shut out this money and start bitching about it. I'm just gonna get this work. I'm gonna go ahead.
You messed up. You're in Florida, so they're gonna do that down there, man.
They're gonna do that down here.
That's what happens in Florida.
I hate our stores here. Anyway, let me digress. All right, so tell us about this work. First of all, Sanford, again, I'll keep saying this. There's a little something extra in the work you do in Bitterroot. You're already a fantastic artist, but I'm telling you, there is an extra element in what you do in Bitterroot. I've seen plenty of splash pages you've done. You just did a last year. You blew up the spot with that Doom book that you did. Very detailed work. Everyone's lauding it tremendously, but there's just something extra when you do this Bitterroot stuff. What can we expect off of this series?
Well, I guess again, thank you for the comments on that. I mean, this is our child. You're gonna give extra care to your own. So that's where that comes from. Again, you have some of these other perennial series, especially from the creator-owned side, where they're revered, and we want to have that same level of appreciation. So the work is inspired by that. I'm always thinking about we should be. Why not? Why can't we be in the same conversations as some of the other, perennial series? Even though we may not have as many issues, but we want to at least have that conversation. But yeah, that's really where I start. I start there, and these guys, they come together with some incredible stories, and I may throw in an idea here or there. That first spread that you saw was just me wanting to do something that I felt would really make this concept even grander, because this is literally just good versus evil, and what that would look like on a astrophysical level, a spiritual level, if you will, gods and demons, if you will, because that's really what it boils down to: good and evil, and what that looks like, visually. And so I think I even told these guys what I wanted to just, create this visual, and you guys just, come up with an idea, because I'm going to draw it, because I had this idea, and I couldn't shake it. I had that vision or that visual for a long time, especially as we were winding down the first story arc, the first volume. This visual was something that kept materializing, and so yeah, that's where that came from. And once I did that, I think we came up with that short story to kind of bring that whole idea together. So you kind of see more of a history of the good versus evil fight, right?
Is that what we're seeing here? I mean, is this, first of all, it's got kind of a sci-fi element to it, and that I can't tell if that's the angle you're going towards. This also looks like this could be a sort of a fantasy element. Shout out to Big Phil, who's in the chat right now. He's supposed to be on here with us, but shout out to Big Phil, he scanned these images for us for the Ashcan. He had some art too that he wanted to show that Sanford did. Was like this splash page here.
You know what this is? I think more than anything, this was Sanford just going to town, right?
Yeah.
Image there was an opportunity. Image was doing an anthology celebrating their anniversary, and they invited us to do something, right? That's how this sort of came about. We were going to contribute something to this Image anthology, and so Sanford just started throwing these images together, and Chuck and I, as we often are with Sanford, are like, what? Huh? And then he just throws stuff at us, and we've got like, a day or two to write something to go with it. But it was really like, oh, let's use this as an opportunity to like lay the groundwork that there's so much more story that we haven't told.
Right.
Will we tell all of the story? We may not tell some of the story, but every character, every image here that you see in this Ashcan, and this art appeared in that Image anthology, and this stuff will be in the trade collection for the next movement. I think that this was like, to me, this was like, oh, this is all fertile ground for us to explore. This is all I think of. I tend to think a lot of what like Mike Mignola did with Hellboy and the Hellboy universe, right? And so it's like anybody could look through any of these images and go, I want to tell a story of this scene right here, or who is that person? And like, so with this spread that we're looking at right now, it's like, we're going to see in the next movement, we see like Mariah is the lead character.
She's the daughter of Berg.
Yeah. And Cotton is a major character. But the other day I was like, oh man, Nadia isn't here. Like for whatever reason, I forgot to put Nadia. We forgot to put Nadia in here, right? So it's like trying to figure out a way to squeeze her into this arc, but then also realizing that really the question might be what happened to Nadia between this image, which is 1935, right, and 1964. That's a 29-year difference. And what happened in those 29 years? Is Nadia still around? Is she still, and when we get into the next movement, when we get into 1964, there's a lot of what the reader is going to be wondering is what happened to these characters that we knew and loved. Meanwhile, they're falling in love with these new characters. They're falling in love with Mariah. It's like, if you loved Berg, you're going to love his daughter, right? And
I never understood who Cotton was.
Cotton is in the third volume. What's the third volume called? Rage or Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Ford and Cullen and Sarah rescue a group of orphans from an orphanage, and Cotton is one of those orphans, and so we see he's basically Cullen's adopted son.
Yeah, you actually showed an image a couple of images ago where you saw each family member interacting with different folks, and that one page actually, that
one right there,
that page right there is a foreshadow of where things go with the entire Sangre family, actually.
So that fifth panel down, those two kids with the guy, that kid is the kid on our right is Cotton, and so he's a black kid, but he has albinoism, and so that's why they call him Cotton, and he's an orphan, and he's kind of like his generation's version of Ford.
Okay. All right. So this is the next movement. This is the next generation, 1964. Tech is in.
That's not 1964. That's
1935.
Yeah,
oh, this is still 1935.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're going to go to 1964.
Yeah.
So we were tossing out a whole bunch of ideas of where to go next after the first volume, and this was kind of with the kids. That's just one of the ideas. But then David had the idea of moving to 1964, and it just seemed like the most logical choice because they won the battle in 24, but of course, like in reality, every time we win a battle, something kind of rises up to oppose us again. So when David presented that idea, it just just a light bulb went off. So that's kind of why we're kind of showing a natural evolution, kind of a teaser of where the main characters were before we kind of move into the actual main story that's coming out in March.
You put here in this teaser that, the monstrous Jinnu, creatures born of hate and racism, have evolved into a threat that few people are willing to acknowledge, and fewer know how to fight. So how does bigotry and racism evolve into something worse?
Well, it's 1964. So
turn on the news.
It's 1964, man. You
go-go boots. They wear go-go boots in 1964.
That's the fun stuff.
I see even the logo here that you have in the backdrop of this watermark is changed. It no longer looks like a cog. It kind of looks like a record. What is the significance in the change of the Bitterroot logo? Any significance to it other than it just looks cool?
I presented to the guys that I think as the family moves forward and evolve, because the period of time I felt needed to the look needed to represent that period of time, and I thought it would be cool if we could do something that symbolizes that through the our logo. Yeah. And David will tell you specifically, I must have shown him like 1,000 versions of this. He said, nope. And we kept, cycling some stuff until we came up with this idea where it still feels like it's connected to the original design, but it obviously evolved. It's evolved.
So the Jinnu have evolved into something worse, as we can see in these subsequent images. Going into you can't have a Sanford Greene series without connecting covers. It's just if your series has not been blessed with connecting covers, he probably doesn't like you that much. you got great connecting covers. Issues 1, 2, and 3. These are the cover A's, I assume, for the series.
Yeah, all connecting covers or cover A's.
Okay. What is this one on the right? Is that the cover for a trade?
I think that's what we're going to use for the trade, right? That was my vote because I love this image so much, and I feel like it like if I wasn't co-writing this, I would buy this. I'd pick this up in a heartbeat, right?
I'm getting Fantastic Four vibes off of this. You see this sort of Fantastic car at the bottom there, the Doctor Doom looking character in the background.
It's more Challengers of the Unknown, really. That's
Challengers of the Unknown. That's
Jack Kirby and Steranko really were. There was a lot of me yelling at Sanford and texting us, look at Jack Kirby, look at Steranko. That's what we should be going for. We didn't want this. I didn't want this. I don't think Chuck wanted this. Sanford didn't want this. We didn't want this to look just like what the other Bitterroot looked like, because we already did the other Bitterroot, right? We're in a new era, and we're facing new things. And one of the things that Sanford, so Sanford and I kept we would be yelling at each other or like shouting over text, because during the first arcs he was like, can't we give them uniforms? And I was like, no, they're not going to have uniforms. Uniforms in the 1920s would look ridiculous. Da, 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 da. And so when we started talking about this, one of the first things I said was, Sanford, they get to have uniforms. And he was like, and he was in. That was it.
I was ready.
I'm getting some Thunderbirds or Go like vibe here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, if you throw all three of the connecting covers again, the faces at the bottom are faces of various family members throughout their lineage. And each main character, the faces are directly connected to those family members, like their mom or their father.
Oh,
So this
okay.
is kind of me paying homage to that family tree that the guys came up with. I put, you know, faces to the names, even though you don't get the names. I thought it would be cool just to have those faces there representing, you know, that tree.
That's dope. That's dope. All right. There you also have this cover. Who did this cover?
Oh, that's my dude, Trad Moore, man. That dude is he is a force. If you aren't familiar with Trad Moore is the artist and writer of the acclaimed Doctor Strange series that went bananas as far as his original art. It was like one of the greatest art purchases or sales or whatever in art history. I think Big Phil might be an appreciator of that because he does a lot of original art. But yeah, he's a friend, and I thought his style would be really cool. As a matter of fact, just, you know, all the variants that will be coming are just, you know, tremendous artists, generational type talents. They're not just you know, run of the mill artist.
Is that Ford with the scars on his face there?
Oh, that's the other thing about these covers. So the variant covers this time around will be what we call legacy variants, where you have like one of the main characters of this generation, of this iteration of our stories, with characters that are directly connected to them in terms of lineage. And to what David said earlier, this is Cotton to the far right with the gun. Cotton was adopted by Cullen for the most part, and that's Cullen at the bottom in the green tone. So, and then he threw in some goddess, you know. I think Trad looked at all the images that variants that we did over the years and decided just to throw all this stuff in there. He even hand drew the logo.
Yeah, I see that
with the chains. If you guys are familiar with the Juneteenth variant, that was him saying, you know, this is the breaking of the chain. He did an illustration on that. I didn't know he was going to do this. I said, "Hey, man, I would love for you to do a cover." And he turned this in. It was like this wraparound double, you know, spread. And
which issue is this going to be for?
Issue 1.
Issue 1. Okay.
I think it's going to be this version and then a black and white version.
Black and white version.
Yeah.
And then we've got these characters. Do you want to it would be spoilery to talk about who these characters are? Or you just because it's
somewhat, yeah, right.
We'll scroll through the images. We don't have to go through. We don't.
I mean, we can give a quick. So, like the woman that's the character on the left and the character on the right. That's Sandra, and that's E2. E2. These are Blink's children. Okay. And E2 is named after Enoch, Uncle Enoch, who Blink had hated for a very long time. And then she came to realize how much she cared about him. So these are her 2 children that are members of what they call the critical response team. And then the character in the middle is a character named Chase York. And the less we say about him, the better, because there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff with Chase that's going to be revealed later.
He looks like a cross between Walt Disney and like Adam Clayton Powell.
Bingo. There you go. There you go.
Yep.
What about these characters?
That's on the left that's Blink now, in her well into her 60s, I believe.
Yeah.
And then there's Mariah, who's Berg's daughter, and there's Cotton, who is Cullen's adopted son. And at this point, I was just doing the math earlier today. Mariah is in her 30s at this point. Right? Let's see,
like a late 30s, early 40s, somewhere in there.
30s, early 40s,
Yeah.
and Cotton's a little bit older than that. And
Yeah.
so we're seeing this, the generation that we're seeing is like people in their late 30s to early 40s, and then somewhere in their like mid 20s. And then we're gonna when you're doing a story like this that's an ensemble piece, you want to be careful because you don't want to introduce too many characters because you're limited the space and time that you have for your page count, but you want to make sure that you have an ensemble that is really, really interesting.
You've got some other variant covers down the pike for issue 2. This is a reminder. This is the cover for issue 2. You can still pre-order the series. Sanford, I thought you did a post recently saying tomorrow's the final FOC for, is that for issue 1 is the FOC?
Yep.
Issue 1.
Yep.
So look, if you dig this series, and you should, if you want the series to be successful, if you say, hey, I hope this goes, 2 years or what have you, where I want multiple volumes of this series, you got to pre-order these books. We emphasize that all the time here in Black Comic Lords. Tomorrow's the final order cutoff for Bitterroot, the brand new movement. I see the brand new movement. The new movement. No, I got the roots going through my head. Pre-order the book. Go to your LCS. Contact them tomorrow morning. If you have an online one, go on tonight and pre-order the series. In fact, if you really want to be helpful, just go ahead and subscribe to. Just tell your LCS, give me a subscription to the book. I automatically want to pre-order. Put this in my box every month from this point forward. Here's some other covers. These covers are fantastic. I didn't even see these.
I didn't even know they were released yet. Like these, it's funny. Like we keep our head down and we work, and we look up and there's like 20 things happening. And so this is for issue 3.
Issue 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
The previous issue 2 variants, someone had commented on Peach Momoko. I've been talking to Peach for a while about doing something, and she reached out to me and said, "Are you still working on Bitterroot?" And I'm like, as a matter of fact, we are doing it, and it would be awesome for you to do a cover. And so she said, I would love to do. Just can I draw your gods and like that double page spread that we saw in black and white with the good versus evil. She just loved that piece. As a matter of fact, that actual piece is in the hardcover at the end of the hardcover, and she just loved that those gods, and so she wanted to draw those gods, and she thought the imps were adorable, and I was like, you would be perfect for drawing those imps. So that's what she came up with. And James Herron is another phenom illustrator on issue 2. He did a tremendous job. The cool thing about, and this is kind of what my vision was, especially for this volume, I wanted these covers to be like an honor to do. Right? Like I wanted people to want to do these covers, not feel like I have to pull teeth. And I think having greats like Dennis and Larry Stroman and Sienkiewicz and Mike Mignola on the first volumes showed that this book is being appreciated on that level. So it's, again, you look at these variants here, a lot of these variants, especially in this iteration, is they're all done by some pretty high level creators in the industry.
Yeah, you got the cream of the crop to work on it, as it should. I would be remiss in the Black Comic Lords community if I did not ask, what's up with the movie?
Tell them, Chuck. Tell them what's up, man.
No idea. David Walker.
Three question marks. When?
Yes. Okay.
I
So
want to
here's
know.
this is what I can reveal. We, originally we were at Legendary, and that their option, it was time for them to renew their option, and we chose not to renew their option, not to renew the option. Some of the directions that they were going in were, we just weren't happy with it. But at the same time, Regina King wasn't happy with some of the things they were asking of her as a director, and Ryan Coogler wasn't happy with some of the things that they were suggesting, and as he was producing it. And so both Regina and Ryan sort of quietly walked away from the Legendary deal, and then when it came time for us to renew the option, it was like, well, wait a sec, you guys had the most creative people, Black creatives in film. You had them attached, you had them ready to go, that we had contracts, and y'all blew it, and now you want us to renew the option. And so we opted not to, but not before we had conversations with Ryan and Regina and said, okay, we're not going to renew with Legendary. Will you still be willing to talk to us? And that's where we're at now. That's as much as I can reveal right now. So there is still a film actively in development. Regina and Ryan are not 100% attached the way they had been before, but we're still talking to them. And now we're talking to all the other companies that had come to us, both before we had signed with Legendary, and what will often happen in a scenario is a company will come along and say, hey, if it doesn't work out with Legendary, come to us. And so that's where we're at. And I'm really hoping that maybe by the time San Diego Comic-Con rolls around this summer, we'll have like some big announcements to make. I would still love to see the team that we had, that Legendary had put together, come together, and Legendary, for whatever reason, just there's a whole host of reasons why it just wasn't working out with them. And these things happen. There's some of these comic projects that will be in development for decades. I hope that doesn't happen with this. I really think that it was a combination of COVID and then the Writers Guild strike really kind of put the brakes on a lot of things, on a lot of projects, and ours sort of got caught up in that. So, and I see that Dr. Ebony Toussaint just asked a question. Did someone answer the Bitter Root question about New York City Comic-Con? We'll probably be there. I mean, Chuck, you weren't there last year.
No.
But I think this New York Comic-Con's close to the release of the trick, right?
I put my application in today, so we'll see how that goes.
Hey, what's up, Ebony? That's homegirl. She's from South Carolina.
It's amazing to me that you guys actually have to do applications to go to. I'm like,
well, I do. They probably don't.
I find it hard to believe. That's crazy. We have Sanford. Big Phil.
Yep.
You mentioned him a few times. He's in the back here. He's not even looking at the screen. Look at him. We'll just stare at him. Hey, Big Phil.
Phil's
not even listening. That's how I know he's not listening.
He's watching a basketball game.
He's watching a game. We're looking at you. Your mic is muted.
So I got to answer this question because Bobby Coltrane just answered this question. I'm going to lay it down. So is Sinners, someone was asking, is Sinners a knockoff?
You're still muted, Phil.
And no, Sinners, which is Coogler's new movie, is not a knockoff of Bitter Root. I will tell you what I believe is the truth, and this is coming from some really deep sources. Blade is dead over at Marvel, at the MCU. They can't get it to work.
Like
Sinners,
officially dead?
Not officially dead. They haven't pulled the plug on it. They never pull the plug on anything.
Yeah.
But from everybody I know at Marvel and everybody I know in Hollywood, Sinners is what Blade was supposed to be. And there was some. My understanding is that there was some sort of disagreement, and they'd asked Ryan to the Coogler to come up with some ideas for Blade. They wanted Blade to be set in the 1920s. That was, if you go back, you can read the trades. They were all the stuff they were talking about. Blade was going to be set in the 1920s, and so suddenly Blade wasn't going to be set in the 1920s anymore. And suddenly you weren't hearing Ryan's name attached to Marvel stuff anymore. And then all of a sudden he's got this other movie coming out. I know people who've read the screenplay to Sinners and have said it's nothing like Bitterroot. And so I'm confident that we're not in a, scenario where we got ripped off. But it's this is a question I get asked so often that I had to actually get on the phone and start calling people that I knew, going, okay, what's going on here? What's happening?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I get this question, when it first the Sinners trailer came out.
I think I asked you that question when we interviewed you. Like, where you?
Yeah. And it, to David's point, it's a small miracle that Bitterroot is still on the front burner of Regina King and Coogler. To his point, you're dealing with Hollywood, and these folks are whatever. They're into whatever they're into, and they can't see past certain things, even with names attached. And you're seeing it. To his point, Blade is an obvious, that would be an obvious knockout, and Marvel can't seem to put two, feet in front of, one foot in front of the other before they, it falls apart. So there's a lot of politics behind that stuff, but to still have them committed to this thing and to still have interest in Hollywood or whatever, it's still, even after the pandemic and strikes and all kinds of other things, it's a small miracle. So that being said, that's why another reason why we came together and said, hey guys, people are wanting something from us. The movie thing, we can't control what happens out there, but we can make something happen, on our laptops or on our drawing boards. So that was another big motivator for us to really come back, strong.
Something David said to us in a previous meeting that really resonated with me, that white people can have a dozen zombie movies and no one bats an eye, but you can't have two movies that have black characters that fight a form of monster, and everyone's like, oh no, it can't be two of things exist in the same space. And something he said I want to aspire to, where we break that mold, we can have 10 historical fiction monster movies that with black people as the main characters. So yeah. But when it did first come out, I did kind of do a double take, like
we all did.
But
I trust David. I trust David. I trust his opinion, his lead.
Yeah, he David's probably
He calmed me down.
He's the most connected to the Hollywood side of things, because our agent and stuff is connected to his, they're part of his agency or people that he works with. So we trust all that stuff. And look, I appreciate people were more upset about the Sinners thing looking close to our thing than I was like, wow, people really care. So again, to that point, we see the love, we appreciate it, and that's why we're bringing this thing back. And
people are ready to fight for y'all, man. Like, y'all ripped out Bitterroot. How could you rip out Bitterroot?
Yeah, two things can still be, can still exist, man. To Chuck's point,
exactly.
And I've gone through this twice now, right? With Bitterroot's my third time going through this, having a project that's making the rounds in Hollywood, and Hollywood saying, "Oh, well, there's already something like this in development," and it's like, well, what do you like? So what? Again, it's again, there's this double standard that applies to us, and it doesn't just apply to us in film. It's more prevalent in film, but it applies to us in comics too. And it's one of the reasons why I'm a strong proponent not only for indie projects, but for doing it yourself, for going to, like, whether it's a Kickstarter or a Zoop or somewhere like that, and going, look, I literally today just recorded the video for my new Kickstarter campaign, which will be dropping later in March, right? Because I got tired of hearing stuff from publishers going, well, we don't really, the moment somebody says, well, we don't, what that means is you're going to be screwed. You're going to be screwed because they're not going to put all their energy into making your book a hit. And then if your book isn't a hit, then they use that against you next time around. You could do the dopest book there is. You could do something that's amazing. And I say this all the time. I point this out all the time because there's no creator, none better than Kyle Baker. I'm talking white or black, right? Kyle Baker should be at the top of everybody's list as the greatest comics creators of all time. And I'm talking up there with Jack Kirby and Will Eisner and all them. But so many of Kyle's books were put out by companies who didn't know what to do with them.
Why I Hate Saturn?
Why I Hate Saturn is in the top 10 greatest graphic novels of all time.
Dennis Cowan's the one who introduced me to that book 30 years ago.
And you know what? Kyle's now self-publishing that book.
Yeah.
Kyle's now self-publishing that book. It was originally published, I believe, by Piranha Press, which was an imprint of DC, and they blew it, right? And we just happen to be really lucky. I believe this Bitterroot, and part of the reason we're really lucky is so many of the people that are listening right now, that are watching right now, is that it was a matter of timing. It was a matter of us really pushing and connecting at the right time. But we could have easily been one of those titles that people be like, what, whatever. Oh, you guys did something, right? And so it's crucial to have these communities. I mean, Chuck, I don't know if you see in the comments in here, but people are asking you about Flawed and On the Stump. They want more of that, right? And I'm always saying to Chuck, do more stuff, right? Get more stuff out there. But it's really easy to become demoralized, right? It's really easy to allow rejection or poor sales or all those things to defeat you, when it's like, I told these kids in Cleveland, they said, what keeps you going? I said, spite is the greatest motivator I have. I will do everything I can just to make somebody else look foolish, because I'm spiteful.
That's why we here at Black Comic Lords are here to support you guys and shed light on your work. And to that point, the more independent stuff you do is the more opportunities you create for yourself. And we're here for it all. To that point, your accolades, Sanford, as I said a couple months ago, we're at Original Art Expo, and you put your works in the expo, from basically your entire first issue of Bitterroot, all your original art. Dennis Cowan had a moment where he came over and was looking at your original art. I don't think you may not be aware of this. He came and looked at your art, and he had some things to say. I think we have a video of it. Dr. Wizard, can you play that for him?
He didn't have anything to say. He said nothing. He was like, okay, that's a wrap, guys. That's a wrap.
Where's my producer? Is my producer there?
It's buffering. There we go.
I see Sanford in the airport, and it just so happens we linked up, and our seats were together. I said, man, I got some of this artwork with me. And he was like, man, pull it out. So we're literally on the plane looking at artwork, and I got one of those big 11x17 portfolios, and we're sitting next to each other, and we have it all the way out, and we're going through the pages, and he's looking at things. He's showing love to certain art on the pages. He's critiquing certain things, and he's like, oh man, this is crazy. I've never seen this before. And to me, that was a dope experience to be on the plane with Brother Sanford, and to be sitting there discussing this art on the plane. And it wasn't weird or in no weird way. It was just two brothers on there, discussing really dope artwork. And we were both excited about getting to Orlando.
Well, that was not Dennis Cowan, Big Phil. Big Phil's on the screen.
Big Phil, he's pushing it out, man. He's trying to get it right for the camera.
It wasn't.
Turn off your other television.
Let me cut my TV off.
David, Chuck, this is Big Phil.
My phone. But here's the thing. Let me take my domers off first.
Take the domers off, man.
I wasn't ready. Like, you know, y'all the Cuban system wasn't the best. I had to change my outfit. I was just watching y'all on television. So, but we here now.
All right. So I thought that was the video you had with him and Dennis Cowan. We have the wrong video, but that's fine.
That's all right.
Maybe
brother.
you can share his words to Sanford about Sanford's work.
First of all, what's up, brother Sanford? Good seeing you again.
Hold on,
man.
man.
That's my guy right there. Good people, man. Man, you know what? It was, first of all, that weekend was just incredible. But in all honesty, what was really dope was that to have Cowan come in and for Brother Cowan to come in, and when he stopped and he looked at the Bitter Root pages, he stopped. And I have a video that's going to be coming out. I have a my all access to OAX, and I have the part where Cowan literally sees it for the first time, and he talks about how amazing Sanford's pen and pencils are, and seeing them laid out like that was just incredible. And it was just dope to see another Mount Rushmore artist like Sanford and Cowan. You know, seeing Cowan give Sanford his flowers was an incredible moment, and it was genuine. Like it wasn't fake. Like it was a real genuine moment. And he just sat and he studied all the pieces. So it's the video that's coming real soon, brother. But if that makes,
that's the issue right there. Phil didn't want you to have the exclusive, Paul. He wants.
Come on, yeah. He said you're.
He didn't want you to get the shine tonight, man. He's trying to have it for his own.
No, it's not even. You know what? So I'll tell you what really happened. I'm breaking the series down into days, and I was, I'm very meticulous about how everything comes out. So it was, I didn't get to that particular point. So it's in that day, but it's not edited correctly. So, I can't, we got to make sure everything's right before we bring it out to the public, so.
Big Phil's a perfectionist.
That's all.
I got to say something about Sanford's art. I was, so he'll send us like email scans of the inks and everything, and they look fine, right? They look good. But it's very rare that I see the original pages, right? And I was at a convention. I can't remember which convention it was, and someone came up and they had, it's probably New York Comic Con, somewhere like that, or Emerald City, and they had some original pages from Bitter Root. And I was like, first time I'd seen the original pages, but it also felt like it was the first time I was seeing the art, right?
Right.
And it was like, and I like the colors that we do. I like what Sophie did, and Sophie wasn't our colorist in the first arc, was she?
It
Rico.
It was Rico. Yeah, so
did the first few issues.
But it would have been Sophie's. I think it would have been Sophie's because I remember the pages, and it was from either the second or third arc, and it was a double page spread, and I was like, "Yo, why are we doing this book in color?" Like I was seeing this line work, I was seeing all this stuff, and I was like, this is. I want to see. I know Sanford has talked about this before, but I would love to see like an artist edition of Bitter Root, right? And really see. It's if you ever have an opportunity to look at any of these artist editions, you begin to realize how much is lost in the printing process, not just how much is lost when stuff gets colored, but how much is lost in the printing process. And I do believe that for as dope as Bitter Root looks, I feel like most of y'all haven't really seen how dope it really is, right? And so I just had to throw that in. And I know from having conversations with Dennis how he feels about Sanford's work, right? And it's just like he's, you know, he's a fan, and that's, to me, that's a crazy thing. And it's not just the art, it's the story itself. It's interesting when someone that you've grown up, you know, admiring, right. and Dennis isn't that much older than me. It's someone that you look up to as a hero, and they look to you as a contemporary and someone who's putting in the work. And that means a lot too. That means as much as the love we get from the readers and the fans, you know?
Yeah. I saw Kazra just chimed in. Kazra, he's one of the main curators for the Original Art Expo. And dude, that guy put together, along with Bill Cox and those guys at the Comic Arts Fans, just to be in that space with Dennis and Brian Stelfreeze and Jack Kirby. They had originals of Jack Kirby, some Black Panther stuff, Billy Graham. Originals were, all this stuff is in the same space. And to be, you know, in that space and to have Bitterroot amongst all of those legendary works was humbling, man. Quite an honor.
Well, Bitterroot wasn't just amongst, Bitterroot was featured.
Oh, okay, Phil. You want some credit for that? Let me give Phil.
No. I'm saying it was featured. No, because I'm saying Bitterroot wasn't just like, Bitterroot was the only one that we said that, you know. I'll be very honest. Kazra literally said, "Man, I want a whole story from Sanford." You know, so regardless of the whole collections in Black, you know, that's my shit. I love it. You know, that's my shit. I love it. But I'm like, we need the whole. Seeing book. That was just incredible. Like, it's
I believe your book, your Bitterroot #1, was the only entire original artwork book that was presented in
at
full.
The whole show.
At the whole show.
Yeah.
The closest was Phil had the story from the Joe Lewis story.
Joe Lewis story. I mean, David and Chuck, you should see that Joe Lewis story is insane. I'm like,
yes, sir.
Phil owns this thing. Wasn't it the first depiction of
positive depiction?
True Comics #5, the first time we were ever depicted positively on the cover, featured inside of a book. Joe Lewis, 1941. I own all the pages to that particular story. So we had that there as well, but that wasn't the whole comic. It was just a particular story in the comic. So, so we did have 2 full stories, but still, Sanford's was, you know, and my daughter was the one who put all the images up too. So it was a moment. It was dope.
Yeah, your daughter's awesome, man. She kept you straight. You were all over the place.
I needed that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tristan. All right. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I want you to tell what upcoming things that you have that you can talk about, that you want people to go out and support, whether it be Marvel, DC, Independent, Kickstarter, what have you.
Who's going first? Is it going to be me?
I have a unannounced project I'm working on that hopefully will be out in 2026. Other than that, I'm doing some creator-owned work that I'm going to start slowly putting out on Substack. So I'm Substack at Chuck Brown, and just kind of follow me there to see what's coming next.
All right.
Yeah, I've got a Kickstarter that I'm going to be they'll probably be kicking off this later in March for a graphic novella that I've written called it's The Death of Bobby Hart, and it's a neo-noir crime thriller about it's set in the 1970s about a black crime author, very similar to like an Iceberg Slim or a Donald Goines, and it's about his murder. So it's the main artist on that is Dietrich Smith. Dietrich worked with me on Shaft, and he did a story in Red Summer Special for us. And then Craig Johnson II, Kanan White did the cover. We got a couple other covers I'm trying to get together. Yeah. And so that the Kickstarter for that will be launching again in March. And then my Patreon is going to also take off in March because I'm starting to do more self-published stuff. I'm tired of waiting for publishers to offer me work. Then the work doesn't come through. It goes out of print. And And so the Patreon, for the life of me, I can't remember what the Patreon is going to be. So I'll hit you guys up about that. But it's really right now the big thing is the death of Bobby Hart, because this was a story that meant a lot to me. And I talked to some publishers, and they were like, "Yeah, we just don't know," And again, the moment somebody says, "Yeah, I just don't know," it's like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to take this as a rejection. I'm just going to go do this myself. And I feel really like when people see it, it's going to surprise them, because it's about more than just a Black author who's murdered. It's about when the Black spirit is murdered too.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Sanford, what you got going on?
I don't know if my stuff is that deep. This Marvel stuff, DC stuff, unannounced. I do have in the immediate future the Treasury edition of the Doom special coming out in March as well. March is going to be a big month.
You mean Treasury as in like the old school big joints?
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, and in the Treasury, all the black and white art will be there. So it's going to be raw scans. Shout outs to my rep Felix Liu. He got Marvel all of the original scans to the original art, because the original art so complete, and people were, I've gotten inquiries about the original art, and it not being available because it all is gone. So I pitched the idea to Marvel to put the original art in the Treasury, and they agreed to the idea. So that will be there as well. So I'm excited about what that's going to look like, and so stay tuned for announcements about the upcoming other stuff.
Well,
hey Paul, before we go, I need to say something real quick. I would just suggest that everybody pre-orders, goes to their LCS, put on your pull list. It doesn't matter if you don't put on your pull list, and that means a lot of times they're not going to order the next series, et cetera, et cetera. Buy one for yourself, buy one for your friend, go to a shop that that doesn't have it in their regular rotation on the stands, get on the pull list there as well. Get the trade paperback, the Omnibus on Amazon. They were on sale last couple of weeks. I bought one or two, and I gave them to other people. Do your due diligence. Like they said, there's no reason why Bitterroot shouldn't be in the same company. It is in the same company quality wise, but should ring bells like The Walking Dead and things of that nature, man. It's an amazing story, and it just transcends everything. So I'm a fan. I've been a fan, and we got it's up to us to do the work to make sure that the information gets out there for everybody.
All right. Here's a question: Will the Bitterroot crew be at the Schaumburg Center for Black Comic Book Festival? I think it's slated to be in June now.
June this year, yeah. I will probably be there. I gotta work a few things, pull a few strings, but the Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival is the best comic book event I've ever attended in my life.
Facts. I will be there. Black Comic Lords will be in the building. Hope you guys show up as well. David, if you come, I got a drink for you. I'll buy you a drink.
It better be soda.
Soda, coffee, whatever.
There you go.
But guys, we have a tradition. David and Chuck, Sanford's already familiar with this. When the Black Comic Lords, when you interview with us, we consider you family, and so we'll start with Chuck. Chuck, we'd like you to look into the screen and say your name and say, "I am a Black Comic Lord."
I am Chuck Brown, and I'm a Black Comic Lord.
There we go. David, same thing with you.
I'm David F. Walker, and I am a Black Comic Lord.
Wow, wow. Full facial expression and everything.
So ominous.
That was dope. Do you guys have time for rapid fire questions? It's kind of towards the end. Yeah, I know we kept you way over time. Way over.
So yeah, we gotta
jump off, but
we gotta jump off. All right, but thank you all who have watched today. Appreciate these gentlemen for showing up. Support Bitterroot. Pre-order this book, gentlemen. You're welcome anytime. And I tell you what, if you like to come back, let's see, when issue 2 is up for pre-order, why don't you guys come back? I won't keep you for 2 hours like I did this time. I promise. But let's try and help you promote this. We could do it every month if you want. For each issue, we'll recap the previous issue and give them a tease as to what to expect for the book, the issue that's coming up for pre-order, and let's see if we can get the sales going on this book. It's up to you. Just let me know if you're interested.
I'm down. So I'll make sure I'm easier to get in touch with. I apologize for being so difficult.
I'm not going to hold you. I'm not going to give you a hard time about that, David. You're a busy guy. All right. So thank you all. For those who are watching, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video, stick around. Old crotchety Rich is coming up. Telling his son to get off his lawn. Real Talk with Rich is up soon. Just keep watching, and I think Derek has done some weird thing where it moves from one video to another. I don't know how it works, but stay tuned, and you'll be on with OG Rich. Black Comic Lords.
Peace, y'all.
Got you.